It's a brand new year and we have a new episode of At the Bar. Joining me as always is Mickey Fulp of the Mercenary Geologist, Brent Cook of Exploration Insights, and we are in Vancouver. And Mickey, what have you chosen for us this time to drink?
Unfortunately, I did not get what I chose. I chose Canadian Mist because we're in rainy Vancouver, but we had none at the bar, so we defaulted to Crown Royal, which is arguably the best rye in the world.
All right, well, we won't be picky today, gentlemen. And what I'd like to discuss a little bit with you is about field trips. What happens on these field trips? What's the real deal? Tell me the real story, Brent.
Field trips, those are probably the most important bit of due diligence that that anyone can do, that Mickey and I certainly do. Because when you look at data on the computer, or a company comes to you and presents their flip books and yada 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 like that, that's interesting, but that's only the first piece. You'd be surprised how many times you go to a project and it looks completely different, or you'll pick out one little thing that you didn't notice. For instance, I don't know, the property's in the bottom of a canyon and the strip ratio is way up there. It's so key to go out and look at these projects, walk them, and see not only the geology, but what the geologists and the company are thinking about what they've got and how they're actually going to explore it.
How about you, Mickey? What do you look for when you go on these field trips?
Well, first of all, I agree with Brent. These field trips are absolutely essential to evaluating a project. Not only the geology, but just the general lay of the land, to get an idea of the way things situate and geographically are imposed upon each other. Field trips are the way that we do actual due diligence on the project. And one thing that I've noticed is I need to go to field trips by myself or with another geologist like Brent. I very much dislike the multi-analyst tour trips, which tend to be fly in, get taken to dinner, get in a helicopter, go to the project, look 2 hours at the project, play golf the next day, and fly back to Canada or the U.S. That doesn't make it to me. So I want a field trip where I can get with a geologist and learn the guts of a deposit.
So, Mickey, if there's too many perks, is that a red flag for you?
It is. It tells you right away that the G&A on this company might be a little bit inflated, and it does raise a bit of a red flag at times.
How about you, Brett? What are some red flags you look for when you go on these trips?
Well, Mickey mentioned one really interesting was geographic location. I was just on a project in Indonesia last month, and this is a really, on paper, a nice looking, potentially economic deposit, good grade, large copper gold system, but it sits next to the ocean, and if you try to open pit it, you've got a little problem of the ocean coming in. Try and block cave it, the fractures come up and go into the ocean, and you're going to be draining the ocean into these pits, and that's something that you don't get looking at the data. But just going there and seeing that, it's like, bingo, this is a problem.
Mickey, walk me through one of the best field trips you've been on.
I like Peru, so I'm always enthralled with trips in Peru because it's so difficult to get places in Peru. You know, it takes a day to fly down to Lima, and it'll take you anywhere from a day to another 2 days to get to the project. So a cutting edge sometime can be, especially in remote places with little infrastructure, is when you go to Peru and you fly to Lima, fly to Arequipa, and then, oh, you're on the project in 2 hours. That is a bonus, and you don't quite know that because it may say 60 to 100 kilometers of driving, but that can take you anywhere from 1 hour to 11 hours to get there, and I've experienced that.
How about you, Brett? Some good examples of good field trips.
I like the Andes a lot, for sure. I used to work in Papua New Guinea. That was a really, culturally and geographically, physically placed, most amazing place I'd ever been. I think Turkey, actually. Turkey is a really well-endowed country with a lot of culture, a lot of variety, a lot of things to see. I like Turkey a lot.
See, you guys are lucky because you get to travel the world, and I'm sure you have a lot of interesting stories.
I was at a very interesting place in Estonia this past year, and it was Silmet. And Silmet is one of the two one of the two rare earth element separation facilities outside of China. And I found Estonia a fascinating place. I stood beside an 1100-year-old wall that kept the barbarians out. I saw Soviet-era architecture, I saw pre-World War II architecture, and I saw giant new skyscrapers. So Estonia was one of my favorite recent field trips.
All right, Brett, let's bring it back home to the investor. What should they be looking for, or what's a good sign of a good field trip?
Good field trip. I think what's really important is that the company that has the property has a good handle on what the actual economics of a deposit are going to be if they're lucky enough to find it. I mean, and that's what, whenever I go to a property, the first, when I look at a rock, it's like, my trademark, turning rocks into money. What's it really going to cost to dig this up, get the ore out, build the facilities to do it? So you're thinking in terms of money, not rocks, not geology per se, but money. And I think any investor has to have some sense of what a property that's being explored might be worth. Too many of these junior companies, in my opinion, spend a lot of money on things that even if they're successful, they're not worth anything.
Do you share that philosophy, Mickey?
Absolutely. Brent and I are both economic geologists, and I will always emphasize the word economic in that. We pound on a lot of rocks. We've seen rocks all over the world, but really the key to this whole thing is, can you make money mining, processing, recovering metals from that rock, and it's all about economics.
And we are at the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference. Brett, Mickey, what are the most common questions you're asked by people who stop you?
What's my favorite stock? Which, unless you're a subscriber, you don't get to know.
What's going to make me rich, right?
Yeah, what's my favorite stock? What should I invest right now? I am not a certified financial analyst. I am not qualified to give investment advice. Here's what I am invested in. So,
all right. Well,
actually, I think that's a good point. When I write about stocks in my newsletter, it's about what I'm actually buying with my money. It's not what I'm being paid to write, what I'm writing about with my money. But I've got one question for Mickey. Did these walls that were meant to keep out the barbarians, did you get inside?
Yeah, you just walk right into town. And so that proves I'm no longer a barbarian.
So it has nothing to do with field trips, Brett.
Well, it depends on where he's at.
Thank you for joining us here in Vancouver from the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference. Thank you, Mickey. Thank you, Brett. And thank you for watching Kitco News.